This is what sovereignty actually feels like. It's a quiet superpower, not flashy at all, but it changes absolutely everything. You take up space and it's not a problem. You move forward, not in reaction, but from your own center of gravity. And what most people don't realize is that when you finally build this inner structure, your capacity for receptivity expands. Your magic deepens because now it has a spine. If you don't build your own inner structure, your own clarity, direction, and authority, you'll spend your life borrowing it from someone else, from your partner, your teacher, your culture, or your past. This episode is about the importance of balancing your yin polarity with a good, healthy dose of robust yang. You've done the inner work, you've deepened your awareness, become emotionally attuned, and you've learned how to soften, to stay present with what is. These are not small achievements. They mark real spiritual and psychological development, and they form the foundation of spiritual intelligence. But here's the part that spiritual or contemplative paths may leave unsaid. These yin qualities, receptivity, oneness, compassion, they're only half the equation. The other half, the yang, clarity, direction, discernment, responsibility, and action, remains either underdeveloped or underused. And not necessarily because you lack these traits, but because integrating them can feel unnatural or even contradictory. Once you begin leaning into the subtle, expansive, and fluid aspects of awareness, it's easy to view distinction, personal authority, and structured action as somehow less evolved or even incompatible. The very qualities that bring you depth, your openness, sensitivity, spaciousness, belong to what we might call the receptive side of your nature, the yin, the feminine, or the negative polarity. Qualities like clarity, direction, discernment, responsibility, and decisive action belong to the yang, masculine or positive polarity. And while these traits definitely exist within you, they're often sidelined or underutilized, especially when you've been steeped in teachings that emphasize no self, non-doing, surrender, and flow. What begins as a beautiful expansion inward can subtly become an avoidance of the outer, of form, of structure, and of agency. Without the precision and structure that yang provides, awareness remains vague. When cultivated together, these two energetic intelligences form a complete system, a kind of engine for transformation, where insight translates into direction, and self-knowledge becomes applied in all aspects of your life. Your energy becomes usable, effective. This is Amara Strand, and welcome back to my podcast. In this episode, we're going to explore what happens when that balance between these polarities is neglected, and what becomes possible when it's restored. Not by abandoning your depth, but by giving it a spine, because clarity, direction, and authority aren't the opposite of presence. They are its tangible, visible expression. Let's talk about what that actually looks like. There's a particular trap that arises when you've invested deeply in your inner work, not because the work itself is flawed, but because it becomes lopsided. You become attuned to nuance, to emotional landscapes, to the shifting needs of others. You learn to release control, to cultivate empathy and surrender. But something starts to happen. You begin to mistake awareness for agency. You equate feeling deeply with moving forward. And slowly, often without realizing it, you begin to lose traction. You notice that decisions feel nebulous or are needlessly delayed. That your compassion for others begins to override loyalty to yourself. That surrender starts to feel suspiciously like passivity. Your ability to tune in may have become a substitute for actually doing something. And boundary setting, self-advocacy, and prioritizing your own needs comes with a heavy dose of confusion and even guilt. This indicates an imbalance, a natural consequence of developing one side of the inner equation without tending to the other. You've got the voltage, but no circuit. Let's name it clearly. You've strengthened your yin, receptivity, depth, oneness. But if you haven't also cultivated the balancing force of yang, you'll stay in a kind of spiritual suspension. You'll keep orbiting your insight, but not acting on it. You'll sense the truth, but avoid the choice. And this next one is maddening, and I hear it from so many people, and that is when you feel your potential, but hesitate to claim it. And in that state, life can begin to feel abstract, foggy, frustrating, not because you're doing something wrong, but because the structure to carry you forward isn't there. This is where the yang polarity comes in, specifically in the form of personal authority. It gives you the clarity to know this is mine to act on, and the discernment to know where your energy is needed and where it's wasted. When you lack that, you're vulnerable to what I call elegant stagnation. You've refined yourself spiritually, philosophically, intellectually, but you haven't yet grounded it in anything real. And you feel it, don't you? You feel there's something missing. So what does it look like when this missing dimension is restored? When that masculine or positive polarity, structure, clarity, self-direction, is developed in balance with your spiritual depth, something subtle but unmistakable shifts. You begin to carry yourself differently, not with bluster or ego, but with coherence, with definition, using your energy and focus intentionally. Healthy, functional yang is not about dominance. It's not forceful or rigid. It's not a performance of power. It's the internal steadiness that comes from knowing who you are and where your power and authority comes from. You don't lose your sensitivity. You simply stop deferring your power and responsibility. Have you ever caught yourself softening the truth, not because it isn't clear, but because you're afraid of being seen as harsh? Do you sometimes wait for life to move you, rather than stepping up to take the wheel? Have you noticed yourself pouring energy into people or situations that never really asked for it or don't really need it? If so, you're not alone. These are signs that your internal compass may be oriented more towards receptivity than direction, more yin than yang. And this is precisely where functional yang comes in to rebalance the system. And the result is that your energy becomes directed, available, aligned with your values instead of scattered across obligations. You find yourself moving with less hesitation, speaking with more clarity. You stop wasting energy and focus on things that seem compelling on the surface but really have nothing to do with you. Here's an example of what this looks like in real life. One of my program participants recently shared some of the changes she's noticed. She says, "I am now self-directed, even in moments of leisure." Maybe this can be understood as the development or emergence, waking up of my yang energy. Before integrating Peerless into my life, I was moving through life from a mostly yin place and absorbing all things that came my way. And now I'm much more balanced and have been flexing my yang muscle daily. I'm much more decisive with my energy. I notice myself avoiding situations that can potentially lead to energy draining or spending my energy on things that don't align with my being. And as a consequence of this energy maintenance and prioritization, I'm happier, more energetic, and more able to be present in situations that I actually do want to invest into. More of me is available because I keep myself close. I'm not so worried about anybody else's way of doing things. I think this also allows for others to have more respect for my time and my energy and my existence. I treat myself and all that comes with it, even my synthy parts, with love and respect, and my reality responds to me accordingly. How cool is that? Well, I say that's pretty cool. And this is what functional yang gives you, the ability to take up space without apology, to make decisions and then take action on them. And how about this? Cultivating this positive polarity gives you the ability to hold your shape in a world that often wants to mold you into something more pliable, palatable, or useful to agendas that are not your own. Really think about that last one. Holding your shape, being able to stay grounded in your authenticity, being your own center of gravity rather than getting pulled into somebody else's or something else's orbit. This has always been important, but right now the world is so crazy that just having this ability to remain coherent with your true self is what will preserve your sanity. This integration also allows you to move from instability to dynamic balance. For example, you still have compassion for others, but now it's grounded in fidelity to yourself. You can allow life to unfold, but you're also capable of making clear, intentional choices. You know when to let go and when it's time to step up and take charge. These are not contradictions, they are complementary forces. Each amplifies the other when held in the proper tension. When yang comes into balance with yin, your system becomes more than just spiritually refined. It becomes effective. And let's talk about what happens when you don't develop your own healthy yang, your inner clarity, structure, and personal leadership. Because if that function isn't established within you, you'll end up searching for it outside yourself. Not necessarily in a conscious way, but through patterns that may be entirely invisible to you. Patterns that shape how you show up in relationships, how you make decisions, and even how you construct your beliefs. Have you ever found yourself looking to someone else to hold the clarity, to make the plan, to set the direction, to interpret reality for you? Maybe it shows up as deference to spiritual teachers, ideologies, even internet personalities, not just to learn, but to find structure, to feel like your perspective is valid because it echoes someone else's, to borrow legitimacy when you don't give yourself permission to generate your own, to feel safe, to feel like someone is holding it together so you don't have to. Do you recognize this dynamic in your intimate relationships? Maybe you let your partner interpret the world for you. Maybe you defer to their opinions more than you rely on your own. They stop being a partner and start feeling really more like a parent, someone you lean on, someone who unknowingly carries the weight of your unclaimed authority. You may allow yourself to be dependent on them financially. They may have the final say in making plans and setting the direction for your lives. This goes deeper than just habit. You may not be avoiding yang simply because it's underdeveloped. You may have been taught early on that you shouldn't develop these capacities at all. Look back on your upbringing. What were you taught about being self-directed, about speaking with authority, about making up your own mind? Did you get the message, directly or indirectly, that those qualities were unwelcome, too much, inappropriate? My parents told me that children are their parents' property until they're 18, and until then, I wasn't allowed to have thoughts, beliefs, or opinions of my own. Yeah, they said that straight up. There was nothing hidden or ambiguous about it. Now, your family probably gave you more subtle messaging than this, but really take a look at how you were raised and see if you can spot it. Another place to look is your religious indoctrination. Did your religion teach you that surrender and obedience were the highest virtues? Did your culture reward conformity and quietly punish those who tried to chart their own course? Half my family is Asian, and that culture has a strong emphasis on conformity. When those messages come early and often, they don't just sit in your mind, they shape your nervous system. They convince you that stepping into your own clarity is threatening, that claiming space or making decisions without approval is selfish, or that you're inherently unqualified to do so, that it's safer to follow someone stronger, someone qualified, or someone divine. The truth is, yang is essential. It's not optional. You'll get it one way or another, and if you don't do it yourself, your system will look for someone or something else to do it for you. But here's the hard part. Most of the world isn't built to support you in developing that part of yourself. In fact, it often discourages it, which means this work, building your own structure, your own clarity, your own inner leadership, has to be intentional. None of this means you're weak. It means that what's been conditioned out of you needs to be reclaimed, because if you don't exercise your own authority, you'll always be borrowing someone else's. And here's what that really costs you. It keeps you from ever feeling fully safe inside your own life. It keeps you waiting for someone to lead you home, when all along you were meant to build that home for yourself. When you finally bring your spiritual insight into contact with clear, grounded action, everything starts to shift, not with drama or intensity, but in the quiet architecture of your daily experience. Imagine what it would feel like to no longer be torn between what you know and how you live, to have that sense of inner coherence where your choices, your timing, and your energy all move in the same direction. To feel rooted, not in control of everything, but clear in yourself. I am my own best friend, and I trust myself. I can trust myself because I've made myself internally trustworthy, no matter what's going on around me or even within me. For those of you who have followed my work from the beginning, and it's been a while, I don't know, a decade now, you know I went through profound and relentless spiritual awakenings. Everything on every level was subject to this uncompromising dissolution. Every aspect of reality dissolved, washed away. And you might think, wow, bring it on. I want some of that. But when it happens like that, suddenly, unexpectedly, and totally, all at once, it's, well, I suppose saying it's destabilizing is a preposterous understatement. But even then, with my yin frequencies getting kicked into hyperdrive, I was still able to remain steady, balanced on a pinhead, as it were, some days. I could have ended up blissed out, sleeping on a park bench somewhere, but I was able to be a wife, a mother, a friend, a business owner, and somehow navigate all this material activity and responsibility while also staring directly through the illusion and into the void. It was intense, but I had cultivated steadfast, robust yang functions, which I really think is what charted a safe passage for me. You're probably not going through anything so extreme, but take a look at your own life. What would change if you no longer needed a sign, a breakthrough, or external permission before taking action? What would your life feel like if you were the one generating your own momentum because your energy was no longer being absorbed by overthinking, self-doubt, or deferring to the beliefs, needs, and worldviews of others? You wouldn't lose your sensitivity. You'd give it structure. You'd stop living in energetic diffusion and start living with wisdom that has direction. And something remarkable happens here. Your power becomes quiet. Your energy becomes stable. You're no longer reaching for something out there to fill the internal gaps. You're no longer being pulled off center by emotional currents or stuck in a pattern of waiting to feel ready or qualified. Instead, you become the one who returns to center again and again. You speak when it matters. You stop hoping someone or something will align your life for you, and you do it for yourself every day in small and big ways. This is what sovereignty actually feels like. It's a quiet superpower, not flashy at all, but it changes absolutely everything. You take up space and it's not a problem. You move forward, not in reaction, but from your own center of gravity. And what most people don't realize is that when you finally build this inner structure, your capacity for receptivity expands. Your magic deepens because now it has a spine. Now your openness and deep exploration into reality are sustainable. Your compassion doesn't cost you your clarity. If you recognize yourself in this conversation, if you've done a lot of inner work but still feel like something essential is missing, it may be time to stop gathering insight and start building inner authority, not by becoming controlling or imposing on others, but by becoming the one who can hold and support both ends of the polarity. You're not meant to live in suspended insight like some kind of spiritual amber. When you develop your masculine or positive polarity, you can use that to translate that insight and expanded awareness into how you shape your world. So here's the question: where are you waiting for life to carry you, when it's actually your responsibility to set a course and follow it? What would change if you stopped seeking new answers and started applying what you already know? What would happen if you were able to surrender to the flow of life and also have structure and direction? Well, that's the work. Not to become someone else, some spiritualized ideal of yourself, but to become more fully yourself, articulate, grounded, and sovereign. It's not about adding anything to yourself. It's really about radically simplifying your inner domain. I hope I've inspired you to work on developing a healthy, robust polarity. And if you know someone who could use a healthy dose of yang, I hope you'll share this episode with them. And if you want to go deeper into mastering your energy and becoming someone you can trust, you'll find the techniques and support you need to jumpstart your yang at amarastrand.com. And I've left the links for you below. As always, thank you for spending this time with me. We'll talk again soon.